What's up, everybody? Welcome to the 3 and Out YouTube page. I'm John Middlekauff, and we are talking football all day, every day. Make sure you subscribe, like the video, share it with your friends. Let's roll, baby. What is going on, everybody? I feel lonely. No football game on Tuesday, none on Wednesday. We got to wait till Thursday. Pretty good one. We get Bills at Miami. Get Buffalo with a couple points. A little money line dog that I might have to dabble on. But today I wanted to dive into a couple things. First and foremost, the controversy that is Christian McCaffrey and Jordan Mason that kind of took part. We'd already recorded. I didn't even see it. And then today, a bunch of people making a big deal of it. I think it's kind of stupid. NFL contracts, and I think they have something in common when it comes to the quarterbacks and why Deshaun is such an outlier and has become such a disastrous situation for the Browns. I saw Belichick was on with Peyton Manning and Eli last night, and obviously he's going to be a topic of conversation. I mean, you can find him everywhere now, but that he still wants to coach. And we've talked about all these teams. I do think there's a team to keep an eye on. And then something we're going to do for every Wednesday show, we're just going to go Wednesdays on campus. And I'm going to hit 5 things, 5 question marks when it comes to college football. Of course, the Middlekauff mailbag from the video side will be out later today at John Middlekauff. Fire in those DMs. But do you want to go to a game? Do you want to go to a football game? An NFL game? A college game? Well, I got you covered. Because Gametime, the official ticketing app of this podcast, is the best. Been using them for a long time now. They have you covered. Any event you want to go, is your team, and do you live in a city where your baseball team's going to be in the playoffs? Playoff baseball is awesome. Do you want to go to a concert, to a comedy show? Well, I got you covered. Just take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code JOHN for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code JOHN for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. I just want to hit on this really quick because I think a lot of people chime in when it comes to gambling. And if you don't gamble, I don't really care what your opinion is. Because listen, I've gambled for a long time and I've been screwed. And as someone that gambles a lot on golf when it comes to injuries, like they do a terrible job. You never know when guys are injured. And then all of a sudden they withdraw on Friday and you have a lot of money on them. And it's like, to top 10. It's like, yeah, I've been dealing with a bad wrist. I'm out. It's like, what? You know, Ludwig, who's one of the best golfers, has had a knee issue all season long. And then over the last 2 weeks, it was like, yeah, he's going to need knee surgery after the year. Well, it's like the public should know this. There should be an injury report. So if we're all in bed together, I'm pro gambling. I'm pro the leagues being, I'm pro us all involved, but only one league takes that seriously. The NBA doesn't. I don't follow baseball, so can't comment. I know for a fact golf doesn't. The NFL has consistent injury reports. And Christian McCaffrey has been on that thing all of training camp when there wasn't even official training camp injury report because you legally don't have to. But every single day, reporters didn't practice. Everyone in the world knows he's injured. And then the actual season starts, and he's on the injury report. Not just with a calf, but also with an Achilles. So it's not a hidden thing. Everyone knows it. He is questionable throughout the week to not practice. So when Jordan Mason is asked, when did you know you were going to start? And he says, Friday, everyone freaks out. And I think to myself, I didn't have any money on that game. But who could be mad? Right? Because if I told you Christian McCaffrey, if you thought he was going to play, and then he doesn't, and listen, when he was inactive, it was surprising, but not out of left field because he's been dealing with his calf/Achilles. But who would have benefited from that? Because if I told you Christian McCaffrey on Monday, so you had all week long, like last Monday, Christian McCaffrey's out, what are you probably going to do? Put some money on the Jets. Well, if you would have done that, you would have lost. So who's actually mad? Fantasy drafts have already happened, literally when the guy was injured. So I don't know what crew is mad. Jordan Mason said he was starting. Jordan Mason's never been the backup. So he's officially the backup this offseason. And then he's in a position week 1 when the guy might not play. What do you think a position coach tells a guy where the starter is questionable in dealing with something, who's never been a backup, probably all training camp. Better get ready to play. You better get ready to play. You might be the starter. You might be the starter. You might have to play. We might need to get 25 carries. Probably being told that every single game. So a controversy to me when it comes to injury report is a guy not on the injury report at all, who is a key person, who is someone that seriously impacts the line. Christian McCaffrey is one of those people. Obviously, he doesn't actually change it that many points. If anything, it's like half a point or a point. But when Christian McCaffrey is not playing, it's a huge concern. So a player of that level, not injured, and then the game comes and he's inactive. Like, to me, that's a controversy. Not someone who's literally been consistently on the injury report, and not just with like, flu-like symptoms. The word Achilles, which popped up 2 weeks ago. The moment that did, I went red flag. Now, I was actually underselling it when he just had a calf because he kept saying he could play, but when the Achilles popped up, I think that's a big concern. But what's shocking about a guy who's been dealing with an injury who's not good enough to go on a Sunday? It literally happens all the time. It's happened my entire life. So the 49ers, like, what are they hiding? You don't have to announce starters in the NFL. There are guys on the injury report that end up starting and guys that end up being inactive. You don't say on Thursday of a game week or Friday of a game week, hey, just so everyone knows, these three guys are going to start. They've never started before. That's never happens. You're not legally mandated to do it. But I think this fake controversy, because the only person it would have helped, in theory, would have been someone that would have hammered the Jets. Well, if you hammered the Jets, you lost money. I could have made the Jets a, 12-point underdog. You still would have lost. I don't even know what the final score was because there was a garbage time touchdown. But what are we talking about here? Obviously, Deshaun Watson is a conversation that just will not die. And it's, he plays the Jags this week. So sneaky pressure on Doug, and we'll get into that in a second. But I looked around at all the biggest contracts in the NFL, which are all quarterbacks. If you look at guaranteed money, if you look at practical guarantees, if you just look at the total of a contract, like Patrick Mahomes doesn't have the quote unquote the most guaranteed money, but his contract is $450 million. I think it's fair to say he's going to see every penny of that. And most of the guys, Burrow, Lawrence, Tua, Dak, all these guys, Jalen Hurts, like, they're going to see the overwhelming majority of their cash, guaranteed and non-guaranteed, right? So unless you have a Russell Wilson fall off a cliff, you see most of it. Like Derek Carr has never had huge guarantees. He's made like $200 million in his career. Why? Because he starts every single year. As long as you continue to start on that contract, like, you get paid. And when I looked at all the names, Deshaun Watson was the one that stuck out because he was the only player that changed teams in their mid-20s. All those guys, Dak, Hurts, Mahomes, Allen, Lamar, Herbert, Burrow, drafted by a team, invested in a team, and the team starting quarterback, ideally for 15 plus years. Now, we have seen quarterbacks move teams. Peyton Manning, Colts, thought his neck might never be the same. And they got the number one pick and they went with Andrew Luck. Kirk Cousins last year, 36 years old off a torn Achilles. Tom Brady went to Tampa Bay. He was 42 years old. But when you look at all the sweet quarterbacks over really the history of the last 20 years, guys in the prime of their career, 25, 26 years old, never changed teams. Even Russell Wilson, who felt younger than like Brady and Manning, was traded when he was 33 years old. He had been on Seattle for a decade. He had been a 10-year starter for them. Do you think in a million years they ever would have pulled the trigger when he was 25, 26 years old? So Deshaun Watson contract is a great example. Who are the two teams at the end of the day the most interested in him? Carolina and Cleveland. What do those teams have in common? Not sure the owners have any clue what they're doing and are very desperate to be relevant. Let things marinate and figure each other out. They ran Baker Mayfield out of town, which at the time felt like 100% the right move. But sometimes when you rush into things, you look back and you go, well, I'd much rather have Baker Mayfield than Deshaun Watson. And then you look at Baker Mayfield now, it's like, God, he feels like a really mature guy. Had a kid. Feels like he's kind of coming to his own as a man. Deshaun Watson's being sued again for like what feels like the 50th time. And this didn't have to happen. And looking back, I don't think this ever happens again. Because when does a player, and I know he was really good, but it was for like 2.5 seasons. It's not like he had some long resume. So the decision for the Denver Broncos to trade for Russell Wilson is all time bad. But I don't really blame them. I also left out Aaron Rodgers, who was traded at 39 years old, who had been starting for the Packers for 15 plus years, and who had been on the team for basically 19. This never happens that these guys are available. And I think it's a great lesson. If a 25, 26-year-old quarterback who is viewed as a sweet player is available, something is way off. And I mean way off. And I'm hearing a lot of people talk about this. Is this the worst trade in the history of sports? We have talked about Bryce Young before, but I will say this. If Bryce is just a disaster, we've seen disasters before. When you get the character stuff, how could, if I was a Browns fan, I'm just a guy living in Ohio that loves the Browns. It's one thing to have a player struggle. It's pro sports. It happens. Guys go through downs. Turns some guys, it's like, yeah, it was maybe a flash in the pan. That sucks. But then when you get the toxicity of the baggage he brings and just the way he carries himself, he kind of has this negative aura to him. That would be really, really hard. And this is why when you invest in your own guy, like let's say Joe Burrow has a down year. You know what every Cleveland or Cincinnati Bengal fan will say? That's my fucking guy. That guy got us to the Super Bowl. I'll ride or die with Joe Burrow. Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Justin Herbert. Listen, even Trevor Lawrence and Jalen Hurts and some of these guys, like the Trevor Lawrence is a bad example. I don't know how many Jacksonville fans, but let's use Jalen as an example. Let's say he's up and down this year. Throws a bunch of picks, also throws some touchdowns. Like this guy 2 years ago led us to a Super Bowl. This guy was in the MVP mix. I'm giving this guy the benefit of the doubt. Now, none of these guys, the only guy that had even a semblance of a character question mark looking through the top contracts in like the top 12 was Kyler Murray. And what was that? He played too many video games. Every other guy is pretty spotless. And let's face it, when you're a starting quarterback, everyone's looking at you. So no matter what you do would be a big story. I actually think it's pretty impressive. Most of these guys avoid every issue possible, except this guy. Like, he feels like the ultimate turd right now in the NFL. I'm not some moral high horse guy. Like, I would never be like, I refuse to watch Deshaun Watson because of that. No, I just don't want to watch him because he's terrible at football. And he's unwatchable. So I feel for all the Browns fans who it's one of the most passionate fan bases. That place on big downs when everyone's hitting the side of the wall, that sound, have to watch this guy. That sucks. I mean, this really sucks. And it could get really bad really fast. Obviously, it's already bad, but it's September 10th. If this sustains and he doesn't get any better, how do you bench a player that you owe this much money to? Think how bad, like it's unfathomable to think any other guys that I've listed in the top 10, 12 salaries beside Cousins, who again is a mercenary new team. Any of the guys, even, Trevor Lawrence, Justin Herbert. I'm not even talking about the top 3 or 4 guys. I'm talking about the next 8. They would never be benched if they're healthy. It just would not happen. And no one expects it to happen, right? In terms of like what they would have to do on the field. You're living through 3, 4 straight games of 5 picks a game. It's like we're going to figure this out. It feels like you're just stuck. He has an anchor to you. No matter how poor he plays, the only way he doesn't play is an injury. Other than that, you're just financially obligated. In a day and age when no one's financially obligated to really anyone, because there's so much money in the league, you can get off contracts. Like, this is the one where you are kind of stuck. Everyone's probably heard the numbers of cutting him and what that would mean. Someone said $175 million next year because it would all accelerate. You're just stuck with this player. And like I said, it's one thing if you're just a bad player, but you know what? He's trying. He's just not good. It's another thing when you're like, I can't stand looking at this guy. I feel for you guys. Touchdowns, TD, Tutty, taking it to the house, in for 6. I like to call it a tug. Whatever you call touchdown, one thing's for sure. Touchdowns matter more at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. On the ground, in the air, special teams or defense, we do not care how you score them. We just want to bet touchdowns. And DraftKings Sportsbook is the #1 place to bet touchdowns. Ready to place your first NFL bet? Try betting on something simple like a player to score a touchdown. Go to DraftKings Sportsbook app and make your bet today. Ready to do a touchdown dance of your own? I know I do it all the time. New DraftKings customers bet $5 to get $250 in bonus bets instantly and get 1 month of NFL Plus Premium. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use the code JOHN. That's code JOHN for new customers to get $250 in bonus bets when you bet just $5 and get 1 month NFL Plus Premium. Only on DraftKings. The crown is yours. We've tried to put Bill Belichick in a lot of places, right? Eagles, the Cowboys, main those two. I think the Cowboys is going to be off limits. I would expect Mike McCarthy to be their coach moving forward. And the Eagles, like, time will tell. I do think if we're sleeping on a team, because the Jacksonville Jags, who have gone 9-8 these last 2 years and look headed toward that at best, I do think that Doug, who is a great guy, is in trouble because their owner said, this is the best team we've ever had. This is the best team we've ever had. And I think there is tangible pressure on this operation, Doug and Trent Baalke. Anything less than making the playoffs is a disaster. And think about this week. If you lose to the Browns, like losing last week, it was an atrocious loss. It was. Props to the Dolphins for finding a way and creating a fumble and getting a stop when the guy's pinned on his own 30-yard line and going for it. But you lose to the Browns, like, you could argue, like, is that a fireable offense? I do wonder when you think about Belichick that, like, the Giants make sense in theory. Coach there back in the 80s, pretty legendary coordinator. His game plan is in the Hall of Fame because of the beating Montanas and the K-gun offense with Buffalo, like, legendary game planner working for Purcell's. And Northeast guy would fit right in. The New York media would eat him up. But why would he go there? They have nothing going for themselves. Even if they have the #1 overall pick. We just saw Caleb Williams. There's not a quarterback in this draft that will have as much hype as Caleb Williams. And it shows you how difficult it is. You have to wonder if Trevor Lawrence just looks solid this year and salvageable. Bill and his guy Josh go, let's go to Jacksonville. No state income tax. The AFC, not as good as the NFC. Now that division is difficult. Houston's not going away. Obviously, Indy's really good. But I think that's a team that we should be keeping an eye on. Belichick and the Jags. Just a couple years ago, Colin tried to make a huge splash, hiring Urban Meyer. Obviously blew up in his face, but he's tried. And then he goes with a little less sexy pick. I know Doug's won a Super Bowl, but if this doesn't work out, you have to imagine he'd pivot hard and be very, very interested in Bill Belichick. And you'd have to wonder if there'd be some mutual interest back. I want to do this every Wednesday moving forward. I'm going to ask myself 5 questions. We're going to call this Wednesdays on Campus. I can't imagine being a student. Any students listening to this, props to you. I don't know how much money you would have to pay me to sit into a class and listen to a professor, but somehow we all kind of attempt to get through it in our youth. So those of you that are doing it, keep doing it, because that piece of paper, while is kind of worthless, also not kind of worthless. I'm pro school because it keeps your options open, even though I thought it was pretty stupid and still kind of do. So I'm torn, but I love college football. And so every Wednesday, I'll just ask myself 5 questions. Might even expand. I got a couple ideas with this that we'll see how this goes. And I'll just answer. So I'll answer myself. We might get a guy to ask me questions. I got an idea up my sleeve, but this is the first iteration of Wednesdays on Campus. We'll start with 1. Is USC the second best team in the Big Ten? Can you imagine someone like myself who thought that Lincoln Riley and USC was destined to break up? Not because I thought Lincoln sucked. I just thought it was a weird mix. I didn't see the fit. I was like, I don't know if he knows how to hire defensive coordinators. And 2 weeks later, I go, I don't know if they're the second best team. Because I think if they played on a neutral field right now against Penn State, I'd be interested to see how Miller Moss would look against that defense. Now, Drew Aller is still a bit of a question mark. They were just Bowling Green was giving them all they could handle. I was watching that game at the gym on Saturday morning, but it's clearly not Oregon right now. Michigan has a ton of issues. I think USC looks like a playoff team. I said this to Colin the other day. Obviously, that LSU win was one of the biggest of Lincoln's career. But I thought the next week against Utah State, and I get it, Utah State, who knows? I mean, are they even a 6-6 team? USC dismantled them like a top team does playing a Mountain West team. They eviscerated them. They look like we're back. Not like Pete Carroll in his heyday back, but like we're a real team. And I went from the LSU game thinking, when I thought USC was going to lose, I'm like, I still think they'd get 8-4. Then to a week later, looking at their schedule, going, could they get to 10? And if they get to 10, they're a playoff team. So when the dust settles, are they the second best team? I would still hesitate. Like Miller Moss has blown me away. He's been excellent. He's like almost 75% completion percentage. But I think as of right now, they're a playoff team. They're better. Let's ask the next question. What the hell is wrong with Oregon? I've thought about this a lot. I think sometimes, like Georgia's won national championships, right? Ohio State has been a national champion contender, like legit, for, I don't know, 12, 15 straight years. Oregon has not beat Washington in 2 years. Kalen DeBoer beat him 3 straight times. So they have been in some big games and they've lost them all. Like we saw them against Washington as a 9-point favorite in the Pac-12 championship game against Kalen DeBoer and Ryan Grubb, who's now Seattle's offensive coordinator. And they got fucking worked. I don't know. Remember the final score? That game was not close. Now, everyone thought this team was better than that version last year, and I bought into the hype too. You're watching this team. Obviously, their offensive line play has been not good, but all I've heard forever is like how well they've recruited, how well they've recruited. When you play, I'll never forget Leonard Fournette, like his last year at LSU, and going into the Alabama game, it was like he's going to go off against Alabama. It was obviously LSU, Alabama, most years a massive game. And I'll never forget watching that game and thinking, I don't think Leonard Fournette can gain 5 yards. And Alabama treated him like he was me. And that's what good teams do against a team that is very dependent on one great player. Well, Boise State has clearly one of the best running backs in college football, who is going to, I've kind of compared him to Darren Sproles because he's short and probably end up being a second, top 50 pick, depending on what he runs or whatever. But he's an NFL player. That's a type game if you're a national championship contender, even if your offensive line has issues. And let's face it, Dylan Gabriel's not as good as Bo Nix. So you downgrade at quarterback, even if Dylan Gabriel is a good player, like Bo Nix top 15 pick starting in the NFL. Dylan Gabriel's not going to be a top 15 pick. He's not going to be starting in the NFL. So that's what you call a downgrade. You do not let the guy, listen, he's going to get his. You don't let him go for almost 200 yards at home if you're a national championship team. Now, maybe it can change. Maybe you can get better. Dan Lanny's a defensive guy. But right now, it ain't even close. It ain't even close. To let him go for 192 against you is embarrassing, even if he's an excellent player. One thing to get 80 on you over the course of the game, but 192, 3 touchdowns, 70-yard run. I can't take you that seriously right now, relative to the way we talked about you coming into the year, which was like Final Four or bust. Could, if it all goes well, national championship. They don't even look remotely close to that right now. Who would have thought 2 weeks in USC would be way better? And if they played right now, how would you not bet on USC to win that game the way Oregon's playing? Are we tired of Colorado yet? It's hard for me to say yes because I was glued week one against North Dakota State and I was glued Saturday night against Nebraska. So like I enjoy watching these games and I'm not necessarily rooting for or against them. Like I just kind of want to see what happens. Now, here's what I will say because I saw this clip of Russillo talking on his podcast, listing off the stats. I mean, he's 2-9 in his last 11 games. It's ugly. And they got worked Saturday night in Lincoln, Nebraska. Dion clearly loves like NFL guys on his staff, which I have no problem like hiring Warren Sapp to coach my defensive lineman. That's not what I'm talking. Pat Shurmur, that's a fucking embarrassing hire. In that game against Nebraska, and it's been like this since Dion has been there, they can't block anybody. Yet every single time that they broke the huddle, they're going 4 and 5 wide. It's like, hey guys, Dion, one thing I admire, like my parents were huge supporters of me, but there were levels and there was a cutoff point. Like the way Dion is with Shador, like I don't think you could pay my dad $10 million to get to that level. You know, there had to be some humility in there. I think Dion looks at Shador like Shador is better than Dion, which again, he's pretty talented. But they're going 4 and 5 wide. Like Dion's been around football long enough. I know he's not the guy calling the plays, but like, hey, Pat, you want to throw in an extra offensive lineman or a tight end and maybe not spread this thing out when we can't block a soul? It was terrible football. It was just like, listen, it's one thing to lose. Nebraska's better than you. Okay. But to just like, we're going to do this over and over. Can you imagine what some of the Nebraska coaching staff, what was Matt Rule thinking? Like, are they really just going to make it this easy? They can't block our guys. 4 on 5, it's advantage us. What would you do? Would you keep just spreading it out? It wasn't 50-10. At one point in time, it was like 21-0. Like you're not, this college football. Things can change pretty quick. To me, they're just poorly coached on offense. There are a few, and maybe it's Dion because he wants to get Shador all these points. Like the point of this whole thing is to win. Shador's going to the NFL, whether he throws for 100 touchdowns or 2 touchdowns. He can move. He's got a big arm. Like Josh Allen didn't do shit in college and went 7th. Are you trying to win the game or are we trying to do something else? It doesn't quite add up to me. It just, that was bad. Like to me, out of the 2 years, that was one of the most glaring. And if they lose this week to Colorado State, I will say I'm out. Like I'm not paying attention to them anymore because it just, none of it matters. Because if they lose this week, which remember they almost lost last year to Colorado State at home, they're headed for 3 or 4 wins. They win this week, maybe they can get some stuff together and compete to be 6-6. This week, 0 chance at 500. Is Texas back? There are several teams that I just kind of root against. I would say Ohio State, Notre Dame, I would say pretty consistently. And Texas would be one also. Again, no malicious. It's not like I hate these programs. When they're good, I do enjoy watching them, but I like it when they lose. And Texas has always been a program like I enjoyed when they were really down. They don't determine my happiness or whatever. And even against Michigan, I was kind of hoping that, hey, you know, maybe Michigan mucks up this game. By about 4 series in, my takeaway was, one, separate from my Texas agenda, I just kind of thought Quinn Ewers was a lot of hype last year. I remember watching games going, wait, people are talking about this guy like a top 10 pick. The guy I'm watching this year looks fantastic. That game he just played against Michigan, threw 3 touchdowns, but avoiding the rush, stepping up in the pocket, keeping plays alive, his arm strength, how quick he is to make a decision, how fast he is to kind of keep a play alive, but keep his eyes up. He was, I guess I'm sold because I watched that. Obviously, their team has one of the best squads money can buy. I think Texas is a legitimate national championship contender, and I think they're back. And in this modern day, when you pay to play and you have the most money, you're going to have a shot. right? When you can pay to play, Google, Apple, Texas, right? I mean, you're going to win. When you have the most money in a market like this, where the most money counts for a lot, it's impossible to suck. And I've been very critical of Sark. And I do wonder, like, when it really gets tough in a game against Georgia, in a game against even Alabama, I know they look shitty, but a game like that in the second or third round of the playoffs, are they tough enough? I don't know. Time will tell. We're going to see it this year because they're in the SEC. But that was a win. Like, yeah, we can win the Natty. Last year, that win against Alabama was impressive, but their defense sucked. Their defense doesn't look like it sucks this year. Here's the question: Notre Dame? Question mark. In what world? This is the stupid part about the top 25 because Notre Dame was a highly touted program coming into this year. They can only fall so far after, I don't know, losing at home as a 30-point favorite. In what world, if we're going to rank the top 25, I play you, we're both 1-0. It's the second game of the season. I play you at your place, and I beat you, and you're ranked ahead of me. How does that make any sense? Just because I'm a program that no one talks about and not a program that anyone thinks about when they say the words top 25. But we played it on the field. I played you, and I beat you. That's the whole point of this sport. We played 4 quarters worth of football in front of 70,000 people. And when the score ended, or when the clock went to double zeros, we had more points than you. How is Northern Illinois not ranked ahead of Notre Dame? In what world can you lose to Northern Illinois, I'd argue, and still be a top 25 team? I got no problem putting Northern Illinois in there. Notre Dame can't be there. And they definitely can't be ahead of Notre Dame on the rankings. And Riley Leonard, I read a long athletic article on him, how it was hard, it was weird because in spring he was injured and he couldn't practice. He's trying to take this leadership role, and he brought the boys home, and he seems like a great kid. Seems like a dude that you'd want to be in your life as a friend, as a neighbor, as a business partner. He can't throw. So when you pay all this money, Saban said this a couple weeks ago on College Game Day. You can have all the money in the world. You better not pay the wrong guys. And they paid a guy, high character guy, big guy, can run. He can't throw. And Notre Dame in 2024 is not going to have, Jerry Jeudy and Jamison Williams at wide receiver. Their receivers are always, maybe they hit on one, but it's going to be rare they have some of the best wide receivers in the country. Maybe get a tight end and a solid running back. But their offensive personnel is always going to be relative to the Ohio States, the Bamas, the LSUs, the Georgias, Ole Misses, Texas, is not going to be on their level. Because even with NIL, there are academic requirements. It's just a fact of life. So you better have a quarterback who can complete passes and be pretty accurate. And this guy is not. So I get falling in love with him. Once you meet him, he's probably just like, God, we love. You got to make plays on the field, and he can't pass. He can't pass. And I wanted to root for him, but as a buddy 2 weeks ago said when they were playing Texas A&M, we were texting about the game, and he's a high-ranking official for a big-time NFL team. He said, these are the 2 most overhyped quarterbacks in the country, and it ain't close. Because the hype on those 2 guys, but specifically Riley Leonard, because of going to Notre Dame, is the old. Even the Jets, no one, and I mean no one, gets more hype than Notre Dame. Nobody. And nobody consistently doesn't live up to it. Like, after a while, we're just like, yeah, USC's not that good. Like, they didn't even get hype. Hell, this year they had no hype. Top 25. How are they still in the top? How could you walk into the office if you're Thomas Hammock, the Northern Illinois coach, and go, wait, our number, we're ranked below Notre Dame. How's that possible? We literally just played them. Now, I understand going into week 3, it doesn't determine anything. But still, like, How can I take a top 25 list seriously and they all have it if that's the case? And the reality is you can't. Wednesday's on campus.